previous discussions with service members and particularly officers, I would hear about complaints over parts not arriving on time, long deployments, and in my more recent discussions with those officers, the number one issue that they raised to me with concern, often unable to speak publicly for fear of the type of retribution that Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer faced, they say that your stand down regarding extremism did not help our military, it hurt the military. And I want to share with you that perspective, that it caused service members to otherize one another, it impaired group cohesion, and interesting to me is that I've heard those sentiments most frequently from units that are majority-minority, that this was not particularly helpful. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe share with us more specificity regarding the definitions that seem to be a challenge when Ms. Hartzler was asking questions. How should the Department of Defense think about critical race theory?
Could I make a comment, Secretary? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm very limited on my time, General Milley.
Well, I just want to make a comment. The feedback
I know, but
I've gotten
I've asked the question to Secretary Austin.
I don't know what the issue of critical race theory is and what the relevance here with the department. We do not teach critical race theory. We don't embrace critical race theory, and I think that's a spurious conversation. And so we are focused on extremist behaviors and not ideology, not people's thoughts, not people's political orientation. Behaviors is what we're focused on.
I would like to yield some of my time to General Milley because I know that he had some comments that he wanted to make when Representative Gaetz was talking, as well as Mr. Waltz, about a similar subject of the stand down and race theory. Would you like a minute or so to comment on that? Do you remember what your line of questioning or thought was there?
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look it, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets. But I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military. And I thank you for the opportunity to make a comment on that.
critical race theory. So that's the term that most people go with. Critical race theory. That's what we so often debate on television. That's the clip we just showed you. But critical race theory is an inaccurate way to describe what's happening. Like so much academic jargon, the phrase critical race theory doesn't mean anything. It obscures rather than illuminates. It is designed that way. It is designed to confuse you. What's happening in our schools and our military and our government is both simpler and easier to recognize than that. It's not critical race theory. It's racism. Not neo-racism or reverse racism. Those are meaningless terms. It is race hate. It is peddled by the people in charge in the hope that it will make them more powerful. That's all it is. We haven't said that often enough or clearly enough. And because we haven't, because we've been tied up in some pointless debate about a concept that nobody can actually define, the race hate, and that's what it is, has oozed from the universities, and it has infected the entire country, including at the very highest levels. Mark Milley is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He didn't get that job because he's brilliant or because he's brave or because the people who know him respect him. He is not, and they definitely don't. Milley got the job because he is obsequious. He knows who to suck up to, and he's more than happy to do it. Feed him a script, and he will read it. Here's Milley yesterday, the man in charge of this nation's weapons, explaining that he's working to understand a concept called white rage.
I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university, and it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it.
Hard to believe that man wears a uniform. He's that unimpressive. Notice he never defined white rage, and we should know what it is. What is white rage? Well, like drapetomania, it's one of those diseases that only affect people with certain melanin levels. It's a race-specific illness. That's what Mark Milley has learned from reading about it. That's why he's making his soldiers read about it too. They need to know. Watch.
I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers of being, quote, woke.
He's not just a pig, he's stupid. So Mark Milley reads Mao to understand Maoism. He reads communist to understand communism. But it's interesting that he doesn't read white supremacists to understand white supremacy. Why not go to the source? Well, because Mark Milley would be fired instantly if he read those books. And getting fired is the one thing he doesn't want. So he reads about white rage as if it's totally real. It's a medical condition. And by the way, since it's a medical condition, at what age can you catch white rage, by the way? Most of us assumed that our 2-year-olds were just teething. Now we know it's their whiteness that's making them so angry. Thanks, Mark Milley. We appreciate your contribution to our generation's scientific racism. By the way, have you read anything recently about winning wars? Apparently not. We could go on and on and on. Pundit after senator, after professor, after general, each one of them spewing race hate. Whiteness! White rage! Dressed up as some new academic theory. We certainly have the tape. We'll spare you because you've seen it. It's everywhere. The question is, and this is the question that we should be meditating on day in and day out, is how do we get out of this vortex, this cycle, before it's too late? How do we save this country before we become Rwanda? What should we be teaching our children so they can live in the country that you want to live in? A country full of many different kinds of people, many different, but who actually like each other, who are happy to work together, who are united ultimately by the core fact, which is they're all Americans. That is the question.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
On June 17th, 2015. South Carolinian Dylan Roof, a white, unemployed 21-year-old high school dropout, was on a mission to take his country back. Ever since George Zimmerman had walked out of the courthouse a free man after killing Trayvon Martin, and a racially polarized nation debated the verdict, Roof had looked to understand the history of America. Trolling through the internet, he stumbled across the Council of Conservative Citizens, Tri-C, the progeny of the 1950s White Citizens Council that had terrorized Black people, closed schools, and worked hand in hand with state governments to defy federal civil rights laws. But despite the group's avowed racist belief system, in the mid to late 1990s, as the Southern Poverty Law Center reports, the group boasted of having 34 members who were in the Mississippi legislature and had powerful Republican Party allies, including then Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott of Mississippi. By 2004, Mississippi Governor Haley Barbour, the chair of the Republican National Committee, and 37 other powerful politicians had all attended Tri-C events in the 21st century. Earl Holt, the chair of the Tri-C, gave $65,000 to Republican campaign funds in recent years, including donations to the 2016 presidential campaigns of Rand Paul, Rick Santorum, and Ted Cruz. The Tri-C then enjoyed precisely the cachet of respectability that racism requires to achieve its own goals within American society. And its website of hatred and lies provided the self-serving education Dylan Roof so desperately craved. He drank in the poison of its message, got into his car, drove to Charleston, entered Emmanuel AME Church, and landed in a Bible study with a group of African Americans who were the very model of respectability. Roof prayed with them, read the Bible with them, thought they were so nice. Then he shot them dead, leaving just one woman alive so that she could tell the world what he had done and why. "You're taking over our country," he said, and he knew this to be true. Well, not even a full month after Dylan Roof gunned down 9 African Americans at Emmanuel AME in Charleston, South Carolina, Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump fired up his silent majority audience of thousands in July 2015 with a macabre promise. "Don't worry, we'll take our country back."
Joe, the congressman got a little more than they bargained for in that room when they asked the question about critical race theory. General Milley speaking with conviction there, and that had to be difficult for many of the members sitting in that committee to hear yesterday because so many of them fanned the flames of the insurrection on January 6th, and he was pretty direct in his rebuke there.
He was pretty direct in his rebuke to try to figure out the rage that drove people to assault the Capitol of the United States of America and try to shred the Constitution of the United States. So it's so interesting, Mike Barnicle, when you see a grown-up actually in the middle of this miserable experience where you have children running around of all ages acting out and playing to the lowest common denominator. And it's so interesting, Mike, you know, you and I grew up at a time period where Republicans claimed to revere the military. Over the past month, we've seen a United States senator circulate Russian propaganda saying the U.S. military is emasculated. We see a former member of the armed services yesterday attacking the military as woke. Just showing complete and utter ignorance. And General Milley setting him straight.
You know, Joe, there were so many things about General Milley's presentation that were impressive. Among the most impressive in that film clip was, oddly enough, the cutaway to Congressman Gaetz shaking his head at General Milley's testimony. Congressman Gaetz, of course, is under investigation for multiple charges in Florida. But General Milley spoke from the heart. Those were not prepared remarks. He wasn't reading from anything, unlike the questions that members of Congress have before them, written by their staffs, most of them. And General Milley was speaking about an institution that is multicolored, that truly reflects America in terms of its composition. People of many races serve in the United States military. And General Milley was also right about being curious enough and honest enough about wanting to assess where we are in terms of race in this country. What it is that we don't understand. What is critical race theory? I suspect it's not as major an issue as we've made it out to be in the media. But, you know, what is it about America that brings people together? The military is the one institution where people come together, work together, live together, and unfortunately for them, but fortunately for our culture and our country, fight together. And General Milley ought to be applauded not only today, but every single day that he goes to work.